Hello and welcome to today's show with the legendary Joe Bohler, watercolorist. He can pretty well paint in any kind of medium, but we will be talking about all kinds of things with Joe today. Award-winning artist. He's just got a lot to talk about and long time. Grapevine artist as well. I believe Joe, as with Dan Talene, who we talked with yesterday, both have been around the Grapevine since its very beginning in existence. So a lot of great content for today on deck, a lot of knowledge that will be shared. So I'm super excited. Joe is not a big fan of electronics and technology, so everyone needs to feel very special and very thankful that we have Joe crossing over into today's times to record this for us. So without further ado, Joe, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, it's good to be here, Clay. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, we're super excited to have you, and we'll have a slideshow like we have with our other shows coming up. But while Joe and I are talking here at the beginning, feel free to look over his shoulder and enjoy some of his work that's hanging behind him. Joe, for those who don't know you, can you touch on a little bit about how you got into becoming a fine art painter? What drew you to becoming an artist? And also, I'm not sure if you want to talk about your amazing piano skills, but Joe is definitely a Renaissance man, so I'm going to kind of step back and let him take the lead here.
Well, Clay, it's interesting that you asked that question about art and music. They both seem to happen about the same time. I went to grade school in Augusta, Montana, raised on a cattle ranch up there, and I saw an older kid drawing. He had a pencil and he's just making some sketches and drawing. And I thought, that's pretty cool. I might try that. So I got home that evening, rode the school bus and got home, and I grabbed some paper and a pen and pencils and went on from there. That sort of awoke the talent. And then also with the music, I heard an older kid playing a song, an old Hank Snow song. He sang called "Fool Such as I" back in the day, and I thought, boy, that's cool. And he played it down in this low key, and he only played it with 2 or 3 fingers. And I said, well, if I played that someday, I'd use both hands and all 10 fingers. And so lo and behold, I got a few lessons and practiced a little bit, and probably drove my parents nuts. They had an old upright piano in the ranch house, but anyway, it kind of went on from there. And then I played it for my older friend who played the piano for me that I first heard him play. And he thought, boy, that's really good. He said, yeah, you've come a long way. You play it better than I do. So, yeah, that's kind of how I got started. And then I went on from there and took a correspondence course on a cattle ranch and in between chores. And then met my wife, Elena. I had a graphic arts studio in Great Falls, Montana, and little time in the Army. And then it just kind of moved on from there, eventually Hallmark cards, and then off on my own career. So that's pretty much in a small little version of what happened. So it's been a great journey.
Well, and you do have one of the most wonderful women by your side in the whole universe. Elena is absolutely the gem of all the art world, in my opinion. I think she's about the sweetest woman in the world. So regardless of music or art decisions, you made one perfect decision by having her by your side.
I agree with you. She's my Nancy Russell. Yeah, she helps me and guides me. And I do a painting and she never gets to see what it is or what the subject is. And then I bring it up and out of the studio and show it to her. And then she gives me a quick critique, and about 99% of the time she's right. I don't always like what she says, but she's usually right.
That's kind of the case with a lot of muses, is that sometimes we don't like what they say sometimes, but
you better listen, right?
Yeah, they bring out the best in us. I've got a muse too, and she's been by my side for 25 years, and there's a lot of times I don't like what she says, but she's generally right, so what are we gonna do? We're both lucky. So
that's right, we are lucky. Yes.
Well, with the watercolor, I know that that's the predominant medium you like to paint in, and we we got to talking a little bit before we hit the record button, and Joe was really flowing about watercolor and painting his painting. And I won't try to guide him too much. I'll let him talk about watercolor versus oil and why he chose watercolor, and then we'll get into looking at some art.
Well, I think I do both watercolors and oils, but predominantly watercolor. But I was telling Clay earlier that it's 10% of the creative process is actually learning the medium. And the 90% is it a good painting? Does it have good composition? That applies to whatever medium you're using. And so that's primarily what I concentrate on. And as far as the medium, I don't really think of watercolor too much anymore. I can do just about anything I want with it. And it has challenges. I accept new challenges and new subjects, but it's just a great medium to use, and I feel comfortable with it. I like the heavy paint of oils. I like, I haven't put blinders on and just painted in watercolor. So it's just about a good painting to me. Is it solid? Is it good? Can the viewer actually see what I intended or get a feeling from it? And I want them to smell the air and to experience what I painted. So that's it. And it's actually the journey too is a big percentage of that 90%. The journey that you take and the process of painting, doing that whole process, whether it's 2.5 hours or 2 weeks, that's the really fun, wonderful part. When you finish, it's kind of like, okay, it's done now. I've done the best that I could. I go on to the next one, but the journey is everything. And so anyway, that's my thoughts on painting.
Well, it's been an amazing journey throughout your career, and I think that Joe does as good of a job as anyone that's out there, and maybe better than anyone, about capturing moments and capturing the feeling of a moment, which we'll see not only in the slideshow coming up, but I did creep on the catalog for the Prix de West, and wow, you really brought a special group of work to Oklahoma City for the show that's coming up.
Well, I gave it my best shot. I did everything that I could, and that's all you can do. And then whatever happens, you're rewarded when you do a painting. You're rewarded right there. That's the cake. Whatever else happens is frosting. So I've learned that over the years. When you first start out, you're up and down and thinking about, oh, did they like that? Didn't they like that? Did I sell this? Did I sell that? But you got to put that aside eventually and actually get back to reality and focus more steadily on what you're doing. And focus is a big factor as well.
Well, you definitely had great focus, and there's some delicious cake hanging at the Cowboy Hall of Fame right now from Joe Bohler. But I think that's a big part of success that, and you've had a ton of success over the years, is that you're taking joy in the grind, the daily grind, and the reward is that you are happy with your work. And not to be the young guy giving someone advice, but I think that's the key. And I think that's great advice to any young artist, that, focus on the cake. The frosting is what it is, but, I think focusing on the cake is probably is probably how you can have your cake and eat it too, so to speak.
Correct. You bet. Yeah, it's a wonderful thing to be an artist. Great gift from the Lord. Yes.
Well, I am going to start the process of doing a shared screen, and everyone has had a great time watching me try to share my screen, and had great patience with me. So if everyone will just give me one more moment, I will get this shared screen going. All right, Joe, are you seeing the shared screen, or did I screw that up?
Yes, no, we got it.
All right, excellent.
You bet.
I'm up here in the top right corner with us, so I'll just kind of move this around to get us out of the way. Here's Joe to start our slideshow at his easel, and this is a piece we'll talk about here in a moment, but we'll start off with another piece to get us started. And this is one, the Buffalo Shield, figurative piece. But Joe, I'll let you talk about how you went through the process of creating this piece. And we we've zoomed in nice and tight so everyone can see texture and brush strokes.
Right. Well, the whole idea was just to keep the figure and the horse as the main object, and just sort of do a painterly background with watercolor. And rather than put all the detail in the mountains and the trees and all that kind of thing, which you could do here, but it's a little bit more creative, I think, and a little bit more focused on the subject here. The background is actually painted with a sponge, dipping it in the color and pulling it around, and the foreground as well. The whole background is sponge painted. The rest of it is the background with a sponge, and then the rest of the painting is pretty much round brushes. And I like the subjects, and I go with the Native Americans. And so anyway, being raised on a cattle ranch has helped me quite a bit in horse anatomy and cowboys and Indians and whatever. So that's about it on that one.
Well, what I find fascinating about this piece is you look at the bridle of the horse, the detail of the feathers off that bridle, and the shield and the headdress of the Native American subject on this one, even the stitching in the moccasins. I mean, that's not just, oh well, slap another layer of paint on there. That takes a lot of detail work and patience and accuracy. So what goes into that when you're putting those final touches and details into a piece like this?
Well, that's the end of the painting. After you get the big shapes first with the largest brushes that you can manage, and then you get down to the more detailed work. But it's just to suggest those stitches are there, but maybe not all 150 of them, maybe only 30 of them. So the viewer looks at that and he says, yeah, okay, that's a moccasin. Then you can see the detail. So you don't want to overdo it. Just like painting an old man's face, you don't put every wrinkle in there. I learned that years ago. You put a few wrinkles in, you take some out, but it still says wrinkles very, very pronouncedly. So anyway, that's the story.
So Joe is not only a fine artist, but he's also a wonderful plastic surgeon. And then in fine art, he can take some wrinkles out and take a few years off your appearance as well. So if you want a portrait done later in life, call Joe. He will take those wrinkles out for you. Well, this is a fun piece with a ton of color. The Weaver in Peru. This is a great piece that's, just a nice little street scene that I've always really enjoyed seeing, but I'll let you chime in on how it was produced and what your thoughts are.
Well, I actually had a friend of mine, an artist friend of mine, gave me the research for this. She says, go ahead and use it. So I painted in Mexico. It's quite similar to the colors and some of the weavers down in Mexico. So it's Peru, and I just wanted to suggest the figure again, keep everything rather simple. There was much more detail in the actual research that I had, the photos. So I tried to eliminate that and kind of focus the eye on the detail around the figure, the hands, what he's weaving, all of that stuff there, kind of keep the interest there. So that's pretty much it. Yeah, just go with the color. So I thought that was kind of fun.
Well, it's a great focus of color. Was it a similar technique to do the texture of the stucco and the wall behind him like you did with the buffalo shield, or was this a different technique?
Yeah, you have dry brush where you drag the brush across it for stucco texture and that kind of thing. It's similar. It's just the detail, the last part of the painting. You don't want to jump ahead and do that too fast. You want to get like I say, the big pictures, the big values and the big shapes are the ones that are most important. And then the detail comes last. So, but it's just part of the process. Yeah.
It's a fabulous piece. Next up was the one from the opening slide where you were at your easel working a letter home. You were talking about earlier when we were recording about, capturing a moment, smelling the air. You can see, in my opinion, in this piece that she's thinking of this next sentence and how to share it with mom and dad. And, it's just, you really captured a wonderful moment here. And so,
well, our daughter Celeste, I love this painting so in more ways than one. So that's a good head start on doing anything that you paint. Um, I love it especially, and she's our daughter. And but I wanted to, in this painting, I wanted to place her in this situation because I think the writing a letter home is a lost art. It's more of the computer stuff now, which is fine. But the art of actually writing, sitting down, writing a letter, and somebody opening that up and reading it, and that person put pen to paper, really makes it special. So that kind of was my thought. It's just to paint a lost art and to paint a beautiful daughter.
Well, one question before we get into talking more about the painting. How often have the girls had to sit as models for you over the years? And do they enjoy it, or is it, Dad, not again?
No, it never got to be that bad. They always enjoyed it. Maybe I'd borrow an ear or a nose here now and then, or a hand or fingers or whatever, but they joyfully agreed to do it. So I had the models here, so why not just kind of use them? I think I painted just about all of them, but this was one of the more recent pieces here.
Well, a couple of the points of this piece that I'm just fascinated with are how you were able to get that lacy garment over the over the arm there in the foreground, and that translucent quality. And then of course, anytime anyone paints glass of any kind, that I always am just fascinated. Y'all can do this, but probably the crown jewel, in my opinion, everybody talks about in art how hard a hand is to do, but how you're able to get the fingernails done, it's just a wonderful, wonderful touch.
Well, it's just knowing anatomy and painting pretty much what you see. And I learned that from Richard Schmidt years ago. So it's just a matter of they're a good drawing, a good solid drawing. I could have done that in oil as well. But the painting is you have to start with a good idea and a good solid drawing, good foundation, and then build on that with your paint. So the lace probably is one of the most challenging things behind her. It can be. In fact, one of the pieces I had in the Prix de West this year of her daughter, Rebecca, when she was little, I just fought the lace. I was just in a fight with it. And I finally got it to where I wanted it. But some of the simplest things that look the simplest actually might be the most challenging. Excuse me.
What advice do you have, not only for yourself, but maybe a younger artist, when you are trying to paint something that is so simple that could easily frustrate you, to continue to push yourself and fight through that challenge of how to get to a finished painting?
Well, it usually start with something simple. I mean, it could be anything, but just to keep it simple. And just start developing shadow and shade and reflections and patterns, and do a good drawing, and something probably not this complicated as a beginning artist, but you can always get more complicated and more mature as you age. That's kind of the progression of it. But it took me a while. I started painting barns in the old days and landscapes, and I didn't think about painting figures. And then I started studying figures and started adding figures to my repertoire. So anyway, yeah, I would advise young artists to excuse me, well, Laura got me some water here. Thank you, honey. Okay, yeah, so be persistent and be focused. I remember as a young artist, a story of Robert Lockheed in the old days when a group of artists came to study with him. I think it was in Santa Fe and or somewhere else perhaps, but he was drawing and showing them, and they all eventually left. He was still drawing and painting, except one artist, Ned Jacob. And Ned was persistent. He wanted to learn. He wanted to really, really learn. So, and listen, to absorb as much as he could, just like a sponge. And learning from other artists and is a great way to really get motivated. And few good words of inspiration, that works well. You can inspire a young artist to move on and keep going and don't give up and accept rejection, accept awards, just kind of even that whole thing out. And it all works out in the end if you're consistent and you want that as your life's occupation.
I think that's excellent advice and an excellent perspective into that balance of accepting rejection and accepting awards, but just stay consistent and stay focused. I think that's an excellent perspective on anything really, especially art.
Yes.
Well, here's
Yes.
another model familiar to you, the Ranch House Melodies. A lot of great detail in this piece, a lot of other fascinating points to really appreciate in art. So I'll let you take it away from here.
Well, another daughter, Josie, lives in Montana on a cattle ranch, and she was playing. She's very musical. She plays the harmonica, sings, and like her other sisters. And she just grabbed that squeeze box and started playing a little bit. And I took some photographs, but I kind of liked her eyes kind of covered and just the concentration of her movement there with the squeeze box. And so I titled it Ranch House Melodies. And there again, the background's painted, it's watercolor. The background's painted with a sponge. And just to focus more on the figure and the busyness of the musical instrument there. So yeah, she actually has this in her house. So that's great.
It's a fabulous piece. And one of my favorite things is that old James Garner movie where they talk about the cowboy or cowgirl and how they have their hat worn, the way they're wearing their hat, what kind of a mood they're in. If it's tilted back, they're feeling friendly. If it's level, they're all about business. But if it's
Right.
over their eyes, don't mess with them. So
she's concentrating.
She's
focused.
She's got the hat down like I've got my music box here, and don't mess with me. I'm focused.
That's right. That's
Not
it.
the time for conversation. It's the time for some melody. So
well, we get together, we jam and we sing, and every time the family reunion, we all get together. We have music nights, and so we're jamming and singing and playing, and so it's wonderful. Yeah.
Well, if you guys ever invite me, I'll either bring my air drums or my air guitar.
All right.
I'll jump
Sounds
in there.
Good.
I won't produce a whole lot of melodies, but I'll be there in spirit and support you all the best I can. So sticking with the figurative line here, we were at the top hat. Nice piece here that I'll let you go into.
Yeah, the background again is painted with a sponge, and I work a lot light against dark against light against dark, and you can see that particularly in this painting. And just wanted to capture the character. A lot of my paintings, I'll throw a shadow across the bottom, and I did that here just a little bit so that the light, your eye comes up to the light, and light and shadow. We'll have to work with it with figures.
In watercolor, I know a lot of times the color white, you have to kind of use it as a negative space to where you really can't use white quite a bit. So how much of that went on with the beard with this piece, and how much did you add shadows and other elements to that white?
What all the white you see is the white of the paper. There is no paint in those areas. And so, the little pieces of hair there on the side of his, where it goes into the darks by his shoulder there, that's all pulled. You take a small brush, you wet it, and then you can pull that out back to the white to create that. So, and then you just work within that white, and then you work around it. You work the darks around it. It's like painting snow. Same thing, or cloud is when people say, when you paint snow, when are you going to start painting the snow? And I'm painting everything around it. And I tell them I'm painting the snow right now because it's becoming whiter and whiter. Yeah, so it's just kind of interesting. What you put next to something makes a big difference.
Well, and not only is the beard incredibly fascinating with this piece, but his top hat, hence the title, the tools that are in there, it's just amazing, that you're able to work the paint like you did and create that scene.
Oh yeah, yeah. There again, light and shadow, and just a little suggestion there. It's not really too detailed if you saw the original, but just different textures and different surfaces, and just go from there.
Well, it's a stunning piece, and that's one of the reasons I've always found this piece so amazing, is just knowing that you're not able to use white, knowing that you have to be a
Right.
master of the medium to be able to create a portrait like this.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Well, getting more into some gold, we have the Colorado gold here with some white capped snowy mountains in the background, and a beautiful view of the valley in the foreground to middle ground of the piece. But I'll let you go into this piece a little bit more and talk about it.
Yeah, this was a Colorado mountain scene. Telluride in that area, all down through there, and one fall, and I just wanted to play with color, and this is a fairly large piece, but the golds fascinated me, and the colors and the different shades of yellows, and the distant blues kind of helped as a relief there. But I just wanted to show just a good warm feeling of aspen and pines and the distant mountains. That was pretty much it. A lot of sunshine.
Well, this being a fall piece, what point in the fall is it best to come out if someone's trying to paint something with this kind of scenery and color?
Probably late September, October. It can vary. September or October, probably anytime. Sometimes it depends on the freezes, but they usually announce it ahead of time when the colors are going to kind of change. You get a couple of freezes, and you better head up to the high country if you want to see some color.
Well, I get to go up and hike it and see it if I want to see it, but I don't have anywhere near your talent to try to paint it. So I'm on the camera phone medium if I'm going to be in.
There you go.
Well,
that's a good medium. Yeah.
that's my specialty. Here's a beautiful piece, the Venice Canal. I know that you've traveled over to Italy quite a bit, and even down into Greece, and it's where the Santorini Dog Blues was the scene. Probably my favorite story in an artist's repertoire about traveling and you holding hands with the dog in Santorini. But I love this piece because of the perspective, the narrowing of the canal and the water. There's a lot of just wonderful things going on here.
Yeah, those little canals we actually painted. I think this is an on location piece, and actually paint on a bridge, and there's enough room you can set up and people can still walk past, but you find a good spot and you just sit down and paint. And if you're lucky, you can paint in a few spots that John Singer Sargent painted in, and they're documented. So that was kind of exciting as well. But it takes when you go to a different country, it takes a couple of days to kind of get the feel of the palette and what's happening, the textures and what you're working with. Here it was a lot of walls and old things and textures and boats and water. And so just after you kind of get that formula adjustment there, that you just kind of go for it. And we'd paint. It'd take about an hour and a half. We'd have one knocked out. Paint about 3 a day. And we had a lot of fun. 2 or 3 people traveling. Gonski, Fritzler, a few others. We traveled together. But anyway, it's exciting to see this one. Yeah.
When you were saying it takes you 2 or 3 days to get the feel for it. When you all organize your artist trips, do you immediately hit the ground running because you're excited and paint, or do you take a couple days to go around and check it out, like scouting, and then come back and paint later?
If we know some areas, we try to scope that out before we even get on the plane to go over there, and that may be of interest. And then we just kind of hit the ground pretty much running and do a little research there if we need to, talk to the locals, find out what spots might be good for an artist. For there's different spots. A spot for a photographer and a spot for an artist might be 2 different things. I don't know.
Yeah.
But sometimes they're the same.
Well, it's a beautiful piece, and just a wonderful scene. And this is a fun one as well, looking up at the Grand Canyon, just a ton of light coming in with this nice upward perspective of the rocks. And you can, like you said, I want people to be able to smell the air and feel it. You can, I mean, I can hear the shrill of a bird in the background flying over the head when I look at this. It's just an amazing scene.
Well, it was actually a trip to the Grand Canyon. About 16 artists floated down. It's right around 200, 2000, 2001, somewhere in there, I think. And just fascinated with the rocks and the light when I saw this. And that was a play of just working with light, reflected light, shadows, sunlight, and then get a little bit of distance by making everything just a little bit lighter. But I titled it Looking Up. And I remember one of my fellow artists, we were there sketching and painting. He said, "Look at this, Joe." And I looked right in this area. I looked down at the ground, and somebody had planted daisies, and they were growing in this little patch there that, you know, they weren't there naturally. So it was pretty interesting. But it's a great study, and I guess in rocks, because I just had, you know, people say you got to paint rocks. Well, you got to make it interesting if you do that, I guess.
Well, there's so many shapes in the rocks, you know, that really help with the lights and the darks and the warms and cools. I think that they're probably, you know, underestimated in fine art painting, you know, as to what they can really bring to a piece.
I think you're right. Yes. And you know, the warmth reflected up under the rocks coming down from something lit up below is so important too. So just a play in light on rocks, and I really had fun with it.
Well, you can certainly tell because there's a wonderful air to the composition that you captured very nicely. Well, that brings us to the end of our slideshow. Here you are back at the easel with the letter home. And I will stop sharing my screen if I can figure out how to do that. I'll share. All righty. Stop share. There we go. We're back.
All right. All right.
Here we are. Well, this program will air during what we call the Drunch week, or the week of the Prix de West. Joe's about to head down to Oklahoma City, and we'll see each other in person. But besides the Prix de West, Joe, what else do you have coming up? Workshops, shows? What's on the horizon?
I've got a couple of commissions that I need to get to, and so that'll be next. And then probably a couple of workshops this fall, September, October, here in my home studio.
How many workshops do you do a year with that?
Well, at this time, I used to do quite a few, but I'm down to about 2 or 4, somewhere in there. And once in a while, I'll go out of state, or I'll do something like that. But I've got a nice studio here to do workshops in, so it works out really well.
Well, if you ever get an itch to do a workshop in southern New Mexico, let me know. We can organize something down there for you.
All right. Sounds good.
Well, all righty. Well, for those who are watching, to collect any of these pieces, I'll make sure that in the lower section on the posting on the YouTube account, we'll make sure that we have our contact information for the gallery. But for those who like to do things on their phone while they're watching, our website is grapevinegalleryokc.com. clay.grapevine@gmail.com is the email. You're welcome to email, call, text, and we would be happy with any of the pieces that are on the website or were featured in today's slideshow and talk to help you add those to your collection. As you can see over Joe's shoulder, his work hangs on the wall beautifully and enhances any home and collection. So you'd be very lucky to have any of Joe's pieces in your collection. So once again, Joe, thank you so much for joining us today. Appreciate you jumping on the technology train with us and recording a show with us.
Well, thank you, Clay. It's sure good to be here, and we'll be seeing you soon.
I'll be looking forward to that. Any last minute, before we sign off, any last minute tips to a new or young artist, not meaning, you know, a 16, 17-year-old kid trying to start, but even a Ray Kroc finding McDonald's in his 40s or 50s, and same thing with Colonel Sanders. Anybody can be a young artist at any age.
That's true. That's
We
right.
talked today
That's
a lot
right.
about focus and persistence. Any other last minute tips before we sign off?
I think just allow yourself some time to do it. It takes time. Time's a valuable asset. And the more you paint and the more you do, the better you're going to get. And then you can get some help along the way as well. So just stay focused and persevere. That's my suggestion.
Well, you heard it from the master himself. Well, once again, for Clay Speer and Joe Bohler, thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time. And please don't hesitate to contact us to collect one of Joe's pieces. Thanks again, Joe.
Thank you, Clay.